So last night, while I was listening to the whole thing with Elon as he was driving around and talking to us about the amazing aspects of FSD, it never once occurred to me about the application towards Optimus. I mean, I was so focused on the application for the car, I never thought of it. And then one of y'all in the comments said, "Oh my gosh, think about the application for Optimus in this regard." I'm like, "Oh, Scott, I need to get Scott." Hey, Scott, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Randy, how you doing? Thank you for inviting me.
I understand you're out and about. Are you traveling between your winter home and your summer home, or?
No. Well, yesterday I went up to Jacksonville to visit Chuck Cook to take a look at the Optimus that's actually on display up there at the Tesla showroom in Jacksonville. So it seems to be the first one in the state of Florida, and it's been sitting there 3 weeks and nobody noticed, evidently. So we had a look at Optimus up there, and I had come over a little bit early for the Crew 7 launch that was delayed a day. And so I saw it this morning, and I'm hanging on now for the Starlink launch that's going to be this evening. And that means it'll be two launches from, the same coast in the same calendar day.
Wow.
Now, they were going to originally launch the Starlink last night, 6 hours before, but they moved it till today. And I think the reason they do it is they don't want to risk a launch 6 hours before the Crew launch if something goes wrong.
I see.
So it's like Crew launch takes precedence. Let's make sure we get this one under the belt. And if it's okay, you can go ahead and do that. So it's been postponed a couple of times because of that. And so I just want to be here. It has happened, I think, in the past from Kennedy, but like way back in the 60s or something, that there were like two launches in the same day or within a certain number of hours. So it won't break a record as far as the number of hours, but I think it's the first time SpaceX will have done it from the same coast. They've done it from opposite coasts.
Yeah.
And it would be cool if Vandenberg throws one in also, somewhere in there. And so I just want to be here because, why not? I could just get two launches in less than 24 hours.
Absolutely. And we're only, I guess, maybe getting down to weeks till Starship goes again.
Yeah. We have to find out what happened yesterday yesterday was crazy. Is I first went to visit Chuck, and we did Chuck's famous left-hand turn.
Okay.
I did that a few times with the latest version, which is that he got. It's 11.47.
Right.
And I was amazed how smooth it is. I mean, if I was actually sitting there driving, doing it, I would have probably been like really nervous. Is it going to do it right? But sitting there as a passenger, I really felt like, oh, Chuck's got this under control. He's just doing it like a human. So it really was pretty good. I think the irony is right next to where he has to take the left turn. I mean, literally within probably 100 meters is actually a controlled intersection.
I see. Yes.
And he could go ahead and do it there. And it's like, man, why not just go to the controlled intersection rather than having to perform it here? He says, it turns out there are actually more accidents at the controlled intersection than here.
Oh, my gosh.
Because what ends up happening is someone gets the green and they go, and they don't realize there are people running the red lights, because we think of that way. Green safe. It's like, no, green, look both ways and go. And that when you're actually there doing it as a human, you're focusing so much, that you're not going to go until it's really safe. So that was like an interesting piece of information. So we headed on over there, and then suddenly I got a call from Chuck. We're like 5 minutes from the parking lot. I just got the notification that the static fire is about to happen. We got to hurry up. Of course, by the time we get to the parking lot, it already happened. So we had to watch the replay. And it was interesting. I don't think they got the full 6 seconds. They said 6 seconds. It looked like it might have been about 4. In the deluge system, boy, they got a lot of water. I thought they only had enough water for a couple of seconds there just for the launch, but they kept on, deluging afterwards and everything else. And it was rather interesting, the clouds that were formed and everything else. And we just have to see, did they get all 33 Raptors?
They did. I thought. I read they did.
Okay. And did they get the full duration? Because it looked like only about 4 seconds of flames. It depends upon what they consider 6 seconds, whether that involves spin up and everything else.
I did not hear about the duration, but I do believe I read, I did not look in detail, but I do believe I read that all 33 lit.
That's good. That's good. So in the last time, I think it had something to do with the disconnect. There was some failure on that. So it wasn't really a problem with the Raptor itself. It was a problem with stage 0 not feeding the system correctly. So if they've got that under the belt, I'm pretty confident that they will have all 33 Raptors light on the next test flight.
Yeah.
You know, whether they go out on the way up, that's something else. But I'm pretty confident that they will have all 33 light up, and that there'll probably be minimal, if any, pad damage, because so far it looked like it was okay here. And despite the amount of water that's there, that water disappears really quickly. I mean, you're
Yeah.
expecting to see everything flooded, and I'm looking around there and still seeing like dry spots in the parking lot and everything else. It's like it's going to work. Just the question is it going to be September 8th? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like one of those people. It's like, oh, I got kind of an obligation right around there. Couldn't get there quite on the 8th, so if it moves, I won't be. You know, it will be okay, but at the same time, I have to see whether I can get out of those obligations.
There you go.
And so I'm trying to figure out, it's like, do you really think it's going to go the 8th? Because even here, I mean, I drove out here, not last night, the night before, expecting the crew launch, and everything was go when I left, because I always make sure it's like,
Yeah.
before you do this 3-hour drive,
Yeah.
double check. Yeah, countdown clock. I got here, countdown clock was okay. You know, so I get myself ready. Went to sleep in the back of the Model Y so I could get up, because I didn't feel like checking out of a hotel or like having to leave a hotel. It's like, I just want to be right there. So I'm up and ready. And then I get up and it's like, nope, it's canceled. It's like, no. So I have to wait another day. Oh, so I mean, that's with the vehicles that they have under control.
Yes.
So you never know. I would be really surprised. And you've got to remember, it's always net. They always say net September 8th, and that means, what is that? It's an acronym. It's it basically not before. And the acronym will come to me in a few minutes later on what it means.
All right. So on Optimus, to switch subjects abruptly in the middle, if we talk about last night's conversation.
Not earlier than.
Not earlier than. There you go. I need to.
There we go.
All right. So if the demonstration and conversation with Elon last night was important for FSD, I thought, my goodness, it would seem like it's really, really important for Optimus. And let me explain myself, because I'm a novice. I don't know anything about robots, and I know probably less about software development and AI. So to me, what he said was, this is end-to-end AI, and that the implication for me was, with no, no requirement for labeling, no requirement for hard coding. And so the implication to me was, for Optimus, I'm now able, if I'm Optimus, to receive the entire world visually through, we talked about this in our last conversation, through YouTube videos, or through the real world by walking around, or by other of my friendly Optimi walking around and receiving this information. And all of this is going into my brain. And then I'm able to respond to it. But the end-to-end would mean that I don't even have to hardwire or hard code my movements. My actual movements now, the way that I decide how hard to push or how soft to push or whether to push, et cetera, is all going to be able to be learned from the environment. Did I get any of that right?
Yeah, you got it right. And it's really quite interesting what I was trying to glean from that. So Elon didn't call it end-to-end. He called it NBN, nothing but nets.
Oh, nothing. Okay. Okay.
So all the hard-coded heuristics were taken out. So he was saying that the traffic rules were not built in. It just kind of learned that from example. And that's going to be very interesting from Optimus. And there was a lot of very interesting things that I'll try to go down point by point.
Okay.
Now, the first thing, in order for you to, well, when you think about it, when we are taught training, you know, or taught training, when we're taught to drive,
yes,
it starts from the very first time we've ever ridden in a car. So pretty much from birth.
Yeah,
we're in a car, we're already getting the sense of motion, and then we're able to sit up, be able to look and see what's going on. And we see how our parents are driving. We're seeing what's going on. Every now and then we might ask a question, oh, why is this or that? And they kind of explain it to us. But eventually we kind of see it, and we'll notice situations that how the car drives when something is going wrong. You know, if another car swerves out of the way, or if there's pedestrians or cyclists, you slow down, and you begin to learn these things. And so when you actually are old enough to start taking driving lessons, you in effect already know how to drive. And of course, you've already done other things that, and my kids, when they're 2 year old, they already had like their Barbie Power Wheels that were driving around. So they already had a sense how a steering wheel worked. And they already have, you know, if you're riding a bicycle and stuff like that, you're building these things up. And then, of course, you get driver's education, and then everyone gets really nervous when it comes to having to take the driver's test, and especially the written one. And almost everyone says, like, anyone who's studying, it's like, what are you studying? Don't bother studying. It's common sense.
Yeah, no.
You know, and that's what a lot of people feel. It's like, in a way, driving is common sense. And while there are a lot of rules and regulations, a lot of times people ignore those rules and regulations because it really defies what makes sense in that situation. There are, the whole idea of driving is driving safely. And sometimes if you actually follow the letter of the law, you will get yourself killed.
Right.
So you sometimes every now and then, you know, it's like things like rolling stops. I mean, if you want someone to slam in to your rear end, please go ahead and stop for 2 seconds at every stop line. Okay, that's just going to happen. You have to assess the situation and be able to tell. And you can just go on. Sometimes there's situations where you must exceed the speed limit. As a matter of fact, I had a driver test one time in which the correct answer was to go faster than the speed limit. And that was merging onto the highway where the speed limit, posted speed limit is 55, traffic is going 75. How fast are you supposed to go? 55, 75, fast in traffic, slower than traffic. I knew exactly what the answer was, but I was so scared I put down 55 because it was like I didn't I'd be going faster. And sure enough, it was the wrong answer. It's like, well, okay. So we all know that there are these different situations. So when we are learning it, it's because we understand a lot of things about how the world works.
Right.
So we have a basic understanding of physics. And I don't mean that we know, you know, E equals mc squared or anything like that. It's that we understand how the physical world works, that how gravity works. So let something drop and it falls, and the higher up, the faster kind of falls when it comes on down there. We know about what happens when things hit, and we get a certain idea of what's going on. And once we have that kind of basic understanding, you can then start learning about other things in the world. So in order for them to be able to train this thing, I mean, it already has to have a fundamental understanding of a lot of things that have absolutely nothing to do with driving.
Right.
It has to do with how the world operates.
Right.
And then you start throwing the training data in there. And it's really interesting to see all the stuff that they have thrown out, because I think it was it the last AI day or the one before, they talked about, I think it was either the language of lanes or the grammar of lanes, where they were talking about coming up with an LM model to figure out what you're supposed to do at the intersection. And then Elon just goes like, yeah, it's just like, it doesn't have anything here. It just knows which lane to get into. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because in many ways, we do the same thing. We drive up to an intersection and we just kind of instinctively know where we want to go, sort of based on, it's like, yeah, I know I get a left turn coming up here. I kind of look for the left lane. Okay, which of the two left turn lanes should I get into? Because I know I'm either going to have a right turn coming up here, or I know there's like a funny merge, you know, like all these things that we kind of put in there that tells us. And we also know with the cues. Now, that's going to be interesting with a car, because Elon said that when you had the cues of the cars, it went to the lane with the fewest cars, not the one with the most. I'm like, well, that's going to be interesting, because like most people will always choose the longest line to get into because they think there's something wrong with all the other lines. You know, like toll booth, everyone assumes, oh, everyone's over in this one because they must be closed, right? You know, meanwhile, the toll operators are sitting over there. How come no one's coming over here? So I'm kind of wondering if it's actually learning from human behavior, whether it's going to learn that bad behavior or whether it's going to understand that. And again, and we believe it was a shock that was also in there. He mentioned a lot of things about human behavior at stop signs, and how they had to find certain behaviors to go in there. Also, mediocre data you've got to throw out. You've got to make sure that you have really good driving data. But perhaps what was most interesting is when he talked about the shadow mode, that, you know, eventually they'll be rolling this out, but probably in a shadow mode, and it's going to be predicting what it should be doing. So again, it's going to be looking forward the next 10 seconds or something like that. And then it's going to see what the human does and decide how well is it matching.
Yes.
And if it's not a very good match, then it tells us something. Whoa, we need to bring this back to the training set and flag it. And then when you flag it, you have to decide, okay, Was that a mediocre driver? Is that a driver who is dangerous that we don't learn from? Or is that a really good driver that is now showing us the proper way of doing something? And I think they have some filters for that as well, because they were complaining about all the data and trying to sift through it to find something that's good.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it with humans, it will take too long. And I think the AI is at the point that it can go ahead and start to do a little bit of that sorting. So that's a little bit of the wrap up. Now, what does this mean for Optimus?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The first thing about Optimus we've always talked about is that there are kind of three basic things that we wanted to do is we want to have a good hand model, a very good dexterous hand that can at least accomplish certain tasks, the ability to be mobile or at least walking, have a good walking model. And then there's the brain. Right. So you mechanically build something that will give you the dexterity you need in the hands, the ability to walk and all that. And you make sure that the built-in control systems and the servers, everything, able to handle all that. But then it just comes down to controlling it with the brain. And if that piece is missing, then it's going to take a while to get there. And the question is, from the standpoint of Optimus, they were probably taking similar approaches because it's based on FSD that was going on with the Tesla FSD, the driving version of it. And they started to talk about the end-to-end in March to get an idea to say that it's starting to do that now. So they're changing that architecture and they're throwing it out. And now that means they probably are also in a situation that they have a model that understands the physical world. So, physics for a car and physics for a robot should be basically the same. Right. There's going to be some nuances because they're operating in slightly different environments, but there's going to be some kind of ground truth there of what is physics, what are objects, what are things we want to kind of avoid, how trajectories work, everything else. And then there's going to be different training sets. And Elon said they need a lot of training data for driving. They're going to need a lot of that for the bot. Right. And remember, was it maybe a month ago that out of Google, they were talking about how they have been training the Google bot. Yes. YouTube videos and other training sets like that. And we said, well, I mean, that's great for Google, but what it means is since it works for Google, it means it could work for other people. So what they've done is they've, first principle says, hey, look, we see it can be done. Therefore, it could possibly also work for the Tesla bot. And I would think they're going that way because I have a feeling they fell into, again, one of those local minimums or local maximums that they haven't been able to improve it too much because of the design approach and, how they get the training data. So now, if they're using something like this and they're also able to train Optimus, it'll probably a little bit slow at first, and then it will start to pick up and get really fast. So once they get enough in there and they need enough videos, and the question is like, what are those videos? Are those, again, a human going over and demonstrating it to Optimus, like we already saw coming up with that? Or is it, in which case, your training set becomes very small and limited by the number of people that you have and objects you want to manipulate? Or do you go to this other situation where we want to train from the internet? Just look at videos and understand the world from that and build up more and more. And so you're probably going to be seeing that at some point, that it's going to improve as they get that. And you'll see a similar thing as with the Google bot, is that it can now do things that it was not trained to do because it's going to infer, oh, this is what is meant by the particular task description we want to see. And now it would also seem like it wouldn't be that hard. Let's say that you have 100 tasks that you want to start out with. It wouldn't seem like it would be that difficult within your own factory. It definitely wouldn't be difficult. So let's say you have 100 tasks within your own factory that you'd like the bot to do. Yes. So you now can put cameras. You can put cameras on the humans. You can put cameras above the humans. You can put cameras behind and in front of the humans. I mean, you could be taking videos of humans doing these activities day in and day out, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours a day. If there are 3 shifts, you can be seeing this activity. And if you've got 20 humans that all do the same job, you could be getting an awful lot of data very, very rapidly. Then it would seem like you could throw an Optimus into the role. Mm-hmm. You could be doing shadow
activity
Yeah,
there.
absolutely, shadow training. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I would expect. And I just want to check, did my audio suddenly change because my car kind of timed out?
Actually, your audio changed for a minute and now it's back.
Okay. And is it good? Is it
It's
as
fine.
strong as before? Okay, just want to make sure. So it's actually going through the phone right now rather than
Oh, okay.
because it just decided I've been sitting here for so long that the car shut down.
I see. Okay.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I think you would have that shadow mode, and it's going to be very interesting to see if Optimus, or when you train it, whether the AI is really able to kind of put itself into the perspective of the person shooting that video, which is something that we're very good at being able to do. That if we watch some sort of demonstration, we can begin to imagine what it might be like to do it ourselves.
Right.
To the point, I was watching something the other day that something had to be repaired, that I had to figure out. And I could see the guy was going in there and he had like a screwdriver. He was getting ready to do something. And he's doing a kind of action that, based on that, I felt like right in my hand what was going to be, how it was going to hurt if he slipped. I already could imagine what that was going to be like. Yet that was not my hand. That was not my video. That was someone else. So I was then able to kind of put myself into his point of view, his reference frame. And that will be very important, since Optimus won't be identical to the human hands, but it'll be close enough, and to see how it perceives a lot of those actions and activities that are going on in a way to be able to assimilate it into its training set, or understanding. And again, it's a question is it reasoning? There's no sense of consciousness there, and it does kind of reason things out. Potentially, you give it some sort of action where to go, and it's going to try to figure out what are the steps I have to do to achieve that. So that's a form of reasoning you go in there. The question is whether it's conscious reasoning, and how close is it to the way we solve problems versus something else. Now, if we look in the animal kingdom, we don't know if they're conscious. We don't know if they're sentient, but it's really interesting how they can also kind of, literally parrot what other animals do, including humans. I mean, a lot of times the dogs will figure that thing out. So what's going on there?
Not only parrot, but do it apparently from some kind of, built-in
Yes,
intuition. My favorite
model. They have an internal model, and even though like a dog can see two humans playing catch, throwing the ball around.
Yeah,
we're catching it with our hands. We're catching it with our paws.
Yeah.
You throw it to a dog. The dog doesn't try to catch it with its paws. It knows catch it with a mouth.
Right.
So it's sort of seeing what's going on. It wants to play the same game, but it understands it has a completely different toolkit in order to be able to accomplish that same thing.
Yeah. So the bot, we want to put it in a circumstance where it's going to be able to see something being done, a video, actually watching people. It could actually stand there and watch, I suppose.
Oh yeah, that too. That would be part of it. But
just stand there and watch
other people doing it takes a long time.
Right. But and then it also having the input from videos of somebody doing the same task, and variations of that task. It would seem to me that if you're talking about, I'm trying to think of, as you're kind of talking about a video, I'm thinking of complex videos, like let's say taking apart your computer and replacing the battery, your laptop, and removing all those screws with different kinds of tools in order to remove them, taking it off, making sure you don't mess up the wiring and anything else, taking off whatever you have to take off inside, removing the battery, putting another battery, et cetera, in. That would be a hugely complex set. It's something that who've been working with tools, my dad knew how to do everything, and therefore I was trained to do everything. Hated all of it, but I was trained. But as much training as I've had, when I'm going to replace a battery in my laptop, it's like with fear and trepidation. So the bot is not going to be a fear, but as complicated and as delicate as those tasks are, it would seem like you could watch that being done, the robot watch that being done 100 times by 100 different people, and might be able to do a fairly decent job of doing all that delicate work.
Yes, and delicate work always comes down to having the right tools.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of skill in there, but in the end, a lot of it comes down to having the correct tools.
Yes.
So, again, I use always the example of changing a watch battery,
Yeah.
um, and doing something like that, and your jeweler is able to do it really quick and really easily because they have the right tools. They go in there and they've got a specially, designed vise to just hold it in place.
Right.
And they have the right kind of tool that can kind of come over and pop the cover off and go
Yeah.
in and everything else. And so if you're aware of what's the right tool for that task, you don't have to have a whole lot of precision on yourself. The tool will kind of take care of that for you,
Yeah.
and everything is able to go in. Of course, we do it at home. We just throw the watch on the table. It's not down in a vise. We look for like any old screwdriver we got, and we go in there, or like, oh, that doesn't work. Like, go get a steak knife, and you get the steak knife, and you're trying. And of course, when you see the guy with the steak knife holding the watch like that, doing this, putting a lot of force, you are suddenly feeling the knife going into the palm of your hand, aren't you? I mean, when I see that, I'm all like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have my hand anywhere near it. So again, we have a lot of these bad experiences that we'll sort of go in there to tell us that, hey, to do it correctly, we want to make an adjustment or do something a little bit different. The proper tool will make sure that's done correctly without causing any damage, and it'll be very easy to do.
Scott,
But
help me with the other end, though. Help me with the end to end. So, I tried to visualize this in the car version, that somehow this is now going to allow the car.
Basically, they take the rule book and they throw it out.
No, I know, but I'm talking about, it's a little easier for me to visualize the front end. Okay. I get the vision. I can visualize what's going on out there. I get the input that I need in order to make some decisions. And I get lots and lots of that input. And so I'm getting better and better at making the decisions. But then the output is I'm going to accelerate or decelerate or hit the brakes or turn the wheel. This is the other end of the end to end. And as easy as those three things seem to be, sort of, they have to be done in combination with one another, etc. Like the roundabout, I think, is the great example. You're accelerating, decelerating, turning the wheel the other way, turning the wheel, and you're at the same time having to see the entire environment. So it's kind of complex. How it would seem to me that the bot is going to be multiple times that complex, but I'm having a hard time getting the first principles of how that even works. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. How does the end-to-end work with regard to the output? To making the thing move.
I think the term is LFM. I'll let you figure out what the F is, but it's like magic. It's you get pure nets, all the way through, which means somewhere in the middle is this neural network that's just taking it. And again, you have not hard coded in any rules to say that what you're supposed to do at a stop sign. It's just purely examples. And it's like, oh, you kind of come up here and there's a stop sign here. You just sort of slow down a little bit and you go. And it's almost like it doesn't know what a stop sign is. It just knows that that's the behavior you do when you're around one of these red octangular things that's up there that has some letters on it.
Is you slow down.
Yes. So it and again, as I was saying, they put all this effort in that language of lanes, and it seems like they don't need that anymore. So that's why Elon is confident it's going to run with very little power and in a much smaller amount of data, because the heuristics is get worse and worse and worse. And in many ways, I think this is even better for Optimus, because trying to code in everything that you would need to do for Optimus for every single contingency you're going to see in the world would just be unbelievably hard.
Even the
really have to come down to working knowledge of how the world works and an understanding, and sometimes being faced with a situation you've never seen before and be able to reason out on what you should be doing in that situation, and others being saying, oh, it's just like this. So we could show Optimus how to make a bed and then just say, okay, go start making beds. So all these beds is going to see it's never seen that bed before, or these sheets or anything else, but it may be able to reason out that this is what you're supposed to do. And maybe we have to show, oh, this is what it's like if it's a twin bed, and this is what it's like if it's a cot and it's a double, but it'll probably be able to infer some of those things. So you don't have to always show it every possible combination out there. You just show it enough that it's then able to figure it out. Same thing with traffic circles, is there's a lot of traffic circles out there. And the question is, how many do they have to sort of classify if they get enough of those, it's able to do any of them, even though it hasn't seen that one or wasn't trained on it. Yeah. I've got a couple of traffic circles near me, which are rather interesting, which I think are true edge cases because, they're kind of big with lots of shops around it, parking on the inside, the outside, 2 lanes, speed bumps. Was really glad to see that, Elon has, said it slowed down for speed bumps because it would just go roaring on in there and ignoring the speed bumps. And the speed bumps are there because you've got 2 pedestrian crosswalks just before you enter and right kind of at the entrance to it. So you have a lot of VRUs and it's just a crazy roundabout. So if it can master that without having ever been taught it, then that would be amazing. And roundabouts are being constructed like crazy now.
Yes.
All over the place. So that means there's no way it could have ever seen every roundabout, because next month there's going to be another roundabout that opens up somewhere. Right. And it's really interesting. Where I am in Sarasota, they just opened up one a couple of months ago, and the locals still haven't figured out how to drive the damn thing. I mean, they're all going, it's like, we're not quite sure what's the best way. So even the humans are having a hard time.
Oh, sure.
I am super, super cautious because I know no one else around here knows how to do it. But you go to other areas where a roundabout has been established and everyone seems to get it. And there'll be that one out of towner who'll get lost in there. But we don't care about him. It's all about us.
No, you just keep going around.
What are you doing there in rush hour traffic anyways,
Yeah, no, roundabouts. Well, that turns out, I guess, that they're just way safer than stop sign intersections.
It'll be interesting. They may be safer. I'm not sure if you have fewer accidents.
Yeah, right. But they're really slow speed because everybody's. At least you're not T-boned,
Yeah, you're not T-boned, but I have a feeling that you may look at it and say, well, guess what? We are having more insurance claims at this particular intersection than before. It's just that we're having fewer fatalities and injuries, and some of them, like this roundabout I'm talking about in Sarasota. The current version of FSD does not know how to drive it because it's one of those complicated ones where there's too many options.
I see. Yeah.
So if you want to take the first exit off of it, then you don't enter the roundabout properly. There's like a special lane for that.
I see.
But FSD just was not sure, well, which lane am I really supposed to be in here? And it would take the slow lane. You can still get in there and get around. It's like, no, this is the more efficient way. So, and eventually it'll get that probably in the database and figure it out. But even the locals aren't sure because it's really close to where there's a big parking area. And a lot of people are afraid to go in there because they don't realize it actually feeds the traffic circle. They think it goes into the parking lot. Crazy. So again, you're going to have these situations of how do you read it? FSD is going to have to learn how to read signs. I know Elon says it was able to drive without knowing how to read.
Yes.
It recognizes different signs and knows what they are. But you are going to constantly have signs that are telling you the conditions that are coming up, telling you whether you're allowed to park here or not park here, what exactly this lane is for. Not just that it's a right turn only lane, but it's the turn lane into the parking garage and not for the right turn you want to take 100 feet up.
Yes. Yes.
How many have done that? Been caught in the wrong lane, even because Google says, turn right now. I go, oh, okay, it must be this way.
Right.
Like, no, not, we meant 50 feet further.
Yeah, and John Gibbs brought it out in a video this morning. People should definitely watch that particular video with John. He brought up, the thing that you and I talked about months ago, which is, are they going to add the language model to this? Because you're going to want to be able to talk to your bot. You're going to want to be able to talk to your car in a normal language and I've always felt like I want to be able to say to the bot, this is what I need you to do. And I want them to say, are you sure?
Yes.
I want them to be able to clap back a little bit. I don't want them to, get angry. There's enough of that in the world, but at least to be able to say, is this, are you sure about this? And what about if I did it this way? I mean, those kind of things.
Right.
And you're obviously going to need language models to do that.
Yeah. There will be a language model interface for sure. And the question is whether that interface is somehow merged completely in, because the impression I get from Google is like it was almost part of the whole thing,
Yeah.
as opposed to something you stuck on the side as that you would feed into it. It's a good question whether it's going to be innately part of it, or whether it's just sort of an interface that you describe something you want, and then it takes that and then goes ahead and does the task.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Scott, this is exactly what I was hoping to find out from you this morning. This has been maybe, as I said, maybe I said this today. Maybe I said it yesterday. I can't remember now. So much has gone on in the last 24 hours. But that video with Elon last night might turn out to be one of the iconic videos of all time.
Right. It's iconic, but at the same time, one of the worst shot videos.
Yes, of course. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like you just have to either hire, Omar or John to go and fit Elon's car with the right thing to be able to do that, or actually Chuck Cook, because he's got quite the setup.
Oh, he's got a great setup. Yeah. So,
but he had, and it might be a little bit easier for Elon. Chuck is actually tapped into the display, but he had to take the display apart and do a lot of soldering and lots of wires and a bunch of other things in there that he is able to pull that thing out, and while he's recording it, merge it on in. So he does not have a phone that's looking at the display. He is actually screen grabbing what's going on real time.
That's true.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And of course, we'll probably find out is that, like, oh yeah, they get a mode like that already in Elon's car. They could probably do something like that, but they should at least set it up. And the thing is, we really couldn't see very much. We could not see who was driving. All we heard were these two disembodied voices that were assuming it's Elon and Ashok. I could not tell you the color of Elon's car.
No.
And I'm assuming it's an S. It looks like
it's probably an S. He said it was an S.
It's an S, but I mean and I think part of that was like he didn't want to dox himself by saying he's driving around and I don't know, pink carnation Model S or something like that, and everyone would know it's him. More than likely, it might be something bland, just another white Tesla. But it was interesting how many Teslas you kept on seeing around Palo Alto, and I'm not just talking about in the parking lot, but just out and about. It was like, oh, he's tailgating a Tesla right now. There's another Tesla taking a right turn. There's one coming toward him this way. So
yeah, it's in California. It is just nuts. I mean, you see yourself coming and going. I used to care about that. I don't care anymore. And if I cared enough, I'd get a wrap.
Yeah, I know exactly. And I think the joke is it used to be there were so few Teslas that whenever Teslas went by with each other, they waved.
Yes. That's
gone. And that's the point, because there's enough Teslas cutting up other Teslas, and rather than waving, you start giving them the middle finger instead. So that's when you know that the EVs have been adopted. People don't care anymore. Yeah.
Okay, Scott. Well, thank you again, as always, for coming on at a moment's notice in order to make sure that we are ahead of the news. I think this will probably be the first one that talks about Optimus on YouTube. And we'll be looking forward. I'm hoping there's an AI Day 3. I'm hoping that we get some kind of an update. If there's no AI Day 3, that at least we get an update telling us how all of this is shaking out with regard to Optimus, because it is, of course, the big winner. Of all the things that Tesla is doing, it will be by far the largest opportunity. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
And for all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.